Greetings, YouTube friends. Today is Thursday, April 16th, 2026, and I am very excited to be joined with my friend Giani DiPoce. Welcome, Giani.
Hi, Margo. How you doing? It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm doing great. So this is your first time on my channel. I have had the opportunity to be with you on your channel before, but I would love to tell the viewers a little bit about you and what you do. So you want to give us a little intro?
Let's do it. Thanks again for having me on. I have been in what I like to call the digital trading pits for over 14 years now. I say digital because I never went to Chicago, never went to New York to learn how to trade. I'm very much a modern trader in that respect. But I started trading 2012, 2013-ish, and it wasn't, astrology off the bat. We were just chatting a little bit before this. My original background was more like fundamental analysis, looking at balance sheets, cash flow, earnings, all that kind of stuff. And then the more I started to watch the markets, I realized, the stocks aren't really moving on fundamentals or, price over earnings and all that, jargon and whatnot. So I got into the charts a little bit, and this would have been probably around 2013, 2014, a couple of years after I gotten started. And I'm studying. The charts help. Still missing a piece of the puzzle. Come across a guy named W.D. Gann in my studies. Say, okay, this guy is interesting. So I start reading up on Gann. Realize he's using astrology, and then a little bit after that, reach out to Ray Merriman, who at the time lived about 30 minutes away from me. He used to live in Michigan, and that would have been in 2016 is when I met Ray, and then the rest is kind of history. So yeah, I mean, I'm all over the place now, but yeah, trading is what I do all day, every day now, pretty much.
That is awesome. So you've been doing financial astrology with your trading since about 2016. Um,
Yeah, 2015, 2016. So yeah, over a decade for sure.
Awesome. What have you found to be maybe some of the most accurate cycles or methods that you use?
You know, I guess my specialty in financial astrology is more on the mundane side. I've not, I know some financial astrologers that use the IPO charts or the first trade charts, and that's great. Just the style that I trade, and the way I learned how to trade, with kind of an institutional background. I used to manage money, for a period of time. I like the mundane stuff because it's the big picture. 80% of stocks move together, and what astrology helps me find is the theme of the year or the theme of a few years. So, I focus more on the outer planets, Jupiter and beyond. And I found that, if you're looking for, what's going to be the hot sector that no one's paying attention to over the next 12 months, or what might not do good over the next 2.5 years because of Saturn or whatever, I found the outer planets to be very helpful. And then I look at the aspects as well for some of the broader macro pictures. But yeah, that's I'm more on the mundane side when it comes to financial astrology.
That's fascinating. I have a couple of the big outer planetary events pulled up that I thought we might want to take a look at today.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I feel like we are just stacked with them this year.
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
at least.
yeah, to say the least. Do you want to screen share? Do you have some stuff to share, or I could share some charts too? And we
Yeah,
can.
why don't you pull up your charts, then we
Okay,
can work
cool.
off those. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking the first event that we could talk about that is taking place in April is oopsie, we got too many things open. Here we go. The geocentric final ingress of Uranus into Gemini. What's your outlook and take on that?
Well, I think that over the next several years during that transit, you'll see a wider trading range in markets. In fact, my bias is for the first part of that transit to be significantly to the upside, and you might see a complete unwind by the end. And I think it's going to be for the broader market, but let's kind of extrapolate Gemini because Uranus going through a sign, you often see boom bust cycles. That was, a big thing that Ray had discovered years ago, but we've seen it play out in many other sectors and markets. Obviously, we're coming out of Taurus. Crypto had its boom bust. We'll see if it can recover back to its former highs. But when it comes to Gemini, obviously we're in the age of artificial intelligence, and I think it's time to actually look beyond that now. AI has basically created the commodification of thought and information. And so once something becomes commodified, it needs to come to market. And so I think the way that you're going to see this come to market to a greater extent is through the prediction markets. Now, I haven't quite cracked that nut
Mm.
just yet. But when you look at the natal chart of, or really the natal charts of some of these prediction market or betting market companies like Kalshi or Polymarket, it's pretty amazing because they have Venus in the early degrees of Gemini. So Uranus is going to
Huh.
be going conjunct over both of those companies' Venus in early Gemini in the next few years. So um, I'm looking for that to take off significantly more in popularity. I think it's the new Wild West of financial systems. This is kind of, we have to look beyond AI, we have to look beyond crypto. A lot of these betting companies, they settle their trades on the blockchain already. So it's pretty much already here. So I think it's important that we don't get trapped in like, oh, hey, crypto and AI. Like we have to look to the future stuff. And there's other stuff in Gemini too, whether it's drones, communication networks, quantum computing, just internet in general. Everyone has been talking about that in the astrology world. But I think the prediction markets are something that we should pay especially close attention to. Now, my only hesitation as a trader with those is that they don't really have like price data. They don't have like candlesticks, right, on a
Uh,
daily basis and
okay.
stuff like that. So that's been my hesitation because that's how I trade. I look at the price action, I combine them with the cycles,
Mhm.
I combine them with the astro. But I think it's actually a fascinating opportunity for astrology as a discipline overall because you know what they say, opinions are like, what, everyone has one. And predictions are kind of the same way in the astrology community, right? Like anyone can make a prediction, right?
Yeah.
But how accurate are your predictions in time? So put your money where your mouth is. Is there going to be a war by this date? Is this event going to happen by this certain period of time? And the market will tell you if you're right or not. So I'm pretty excited about that.
That's a fascinating take. In my Discord, we've had a few different, conversations going on with, I guess we'll call it predictions, like forecasting with dates and times that we think things are going to happen, with a lot of success. And specifically, right now, what we've been talking about is the SpaceX IPO.
Oh yeah,
Because
Uranus and Gemini, right? Amazing.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are contracts that you can buy on that, So that's been a hot topic in our Discord, but do you know, because I had never really thought about trading those exchanges themselves. Are any of them publicly traded yet?
You mean
Like
like
Kalshi.
Kalshi or Poly
Yeah,
Market? Like, can you
correct.
buy them?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. But there are, so there's kind of like crypto network companies that have my interest. There's companies like Circle, companies
Mhm.
like Bullish, eToro. eToro is like you can follow someone else's trades. I think that's like the network, the communications, the community aspect of Gemini. So I like kind of the crypto adjacent stuff in that regard. But no, Kalshi and Polymarket, I mean, to my knowledge, they're still private, and I don't think there's any plans for them to go public just yet. But this summer, not to shift gears completely, but I
Yeah.
think this is really going to accelerate here soon because Jupiter's going into Leo. Leo rules speculation, rules gambling. So
Yeah.
I think you're really going to see the popularity of these increase. I mean, if you watch any sort of television, I mean, half the commercials are gambling related, and you're starting to see some of them now, be Kalshi, be Poly Market. So I think it's a big thing that's coming down the pipeline.
That's fascinating. I love it. Thank you for sharing that take. That's an excellent take on Uranus and Gemini. I hadn't really considered that aspect. When I look at Uranus and Gemini, my research yielded some pretty interesting correlations to oil and energy system transitions,
Oh,
and specifically around like structural transitions in the global energy systems.
sure.
So that's kind of been what I've been looking at. Like, for example, the first modern oil well was drilled in during a Uranus and Gemini, right?
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and you can just carry through. Then foundations of industrial electricity took place in 1866, but that, and then the first controlled nuclear chain reaction actually took place in 1942. Also
That makes
Uranus.
sense. That makes
Yeah,
sense for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so energy, I think, obviously has taken the center stage since oil broke out, since we have the Iran-Israel war going on. I anticipate that Uranus and Gemini is actually going to take us on quite a roller coaster ride through grid and infrastructure development. In and maybe entirely new methods of energy generation that we haven't even
Yeah.
heard of right now, you know?
I think so too. I've been trying to say, it sounds silly, but I think we have to, because Gemini is ruled by Mercury, Uranus being the higher octave of Mercury.
Mm-hmm.
And so I say, try to think of things that we can't even conceive yet, because that's how innovative
Yes.
this transit can be, right? Like
Yes.
we have to literally try to put ourselves in a paradigm that doesn't exist yet to try to understand it. So yeah, I like that take of yours, where there's going to be technologies that we can't even conceive. I mean, what happens when quantum and AI merge, right? Like,
Yeah.
who says that can't happen?
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah,
and then to throw back to just you were talking about the blockchain and cryptocurrencies in general, but I have a particular interest in stable coins at the moment.
yeah,
But
for sure.
this Uranus ingress Gemini is taking place within Venus is tightly orbed there.
I know. It's like same day. That's
It
crazy.
it is. I know.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so that is going to influence the whole 7-year transit, right? Is
yeah.
having that Venusian uh, currency, comfort goods, all kinds of, I guess, influences in those sectors that we can kind of pay attention to as well. Awesome. Well, do you want to talk about the current markets too a little bit, and tell me
Sure.
what you're kind of keeping an eye on, and do you have any charts you would like to share, or do you want me to kind of keep navigating?
Well, I can lay the background, and then if there's anything that you want to pull up and have me reference, we can do that. But
Cool.
right now, I've been calling it the Gulf War playbook,
Mm-hmm.
because we came out of this Saturn-Neptune conjunction that was a couple months ago, almost to the day. I think it was February 20th or something like that. But when a lot of mundane astrologers were looking at Saturn conjunct Neptune, myself included, I was looking at Russia, because there's a
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
huge history
Yeah.
with Russia, changes in governments and whatnot. And I said, okay, so I'm looking at that, I'm looking at that, and then this whole situation pops off with Iran, and I started thinking, I'm like, wow, oil just exploded like 100% in a couple of weeks. And this kind of reminds me of the Gulf War. And I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, let me go back. And I said, oh my God, like I remember now. So you had in 1989, you actually had three passages of Saturn conjunct Neptune. And the final one was in November of 89. Then in June of 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait, and that
Mm-hmm.
kicked off the hostilities that eventually led to the Gulf War. So when Iraq invaded Kuwait, oil prices went up over 100%, like in a matter of 6 months. Stocks corrected close to 20% over the course of around 6 months. And then by the time there were boots on the ground and there was an actual war, oil was coming down. It continued to trend lower. Stocks embarked on a tremendous bull market that lasted for years, pretty much throughout the rest of the 1990s. And so I'm looking at this and like, wow, there's some crazy similarities, because the NASDAQ topped out in late October. It
Mm-hmm.
dropped almost exactly 5 months, and bottomed basically like a month or so, a month and a half or so after, the situation with Iran kicked off. And oil
Mm-hmm.
spiked and it's been trending lower. Now, it's a little bit different than in 1989, obviously, because the conjunction took place in Capricorn, so it's never going to have the same flavor, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I was looking at that, and I think this actually creates a situation where now people are going to be doubting this rally. I'm actually very bullish. I'm very optimistic about how stocks can finish out this year, and I've been calling it the Uranus Pluto solution to the Saturn Neptune problem. Because what's actually
Mm.
happening now is you're going to have Uranus trine Pluto, that's going to have five exact passages lasting into May of 2028. And I think it's going to create an absolute booming market. I think it's going to be very exciting for anything technologically related, a lot of the innovative things that we discussed a little bit ago. But what's even crazier, and maybe I'm getting a little bit too ahead, and we can
Mm-hmm.
backtrack a little bit if you want. What's even crazier is that you have the final Uranus Pluto trine.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's in May of 2028. And then, like a month later, or just a few weeks later, you have Saturn square Pluto. And so I think it's going to be some sort of debt problem again. I mean, if oil can come back down, you'll kind of see some relief on the bond market front. But I think you're going to set up for something really nasty towards the end of the decade. But I
Yeah.
think in the meantime, I think we got like 1 to 2 years of some really booming markets with AI themes, continuing quantum themes, drone themes, all the things that we talked about just a moment ago. So that's kind of how I see
Yeah, I totally agree with you. This is my analog that I've got running
snapback
here.
rallies.
Oh,
What's that?
I said that I totally agree. This is my analog that I have running here for the US equity markets, just if we look at the
Yeah,
ES as a foundation, right? Which is
yeah,
just generally up. Um,
yeah.
because we're in Venus interval 5. So one of the things I do is track Venus elongation intervals, and then they make cyclical patterns that you can track. And Venus interval 5 is traditionally in the US equity markets a directional period.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think,
So call it a blow off top. Call it a
yeah,
blow off top that can last a couple of years.
yep.
And I'm pretty excited about it. And I think it fits with, Uranus and Gemini too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gemini is volatile. So I think you get a boom up and then a bust down.
Yep.
And, I mean, everyone talks about the next reset. I think it's probably going to happen with Uranus and Gemini at some point. Then you have the Saturn Uranus conjunction. I think is that 2030 or 2032? Either way, I think it might be
Here,
2030.
well, I can find out real quick.
Um,
I don't know off the top of my head, but we will find out.
yeah,
Saturn.
but no, it's I'm all over the place here, but that's what I'm looking at. So I think this is one of those periods where you have to get it while the getting is good, and then we're gonna have to play some real defense in a couple of years. So
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think we share a similar outlook. So 2032, it's June 28th,
okay,
2032, just for reference.
okay,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, I agree. I think that as we come into 2028, 29, I think we've got probably some pretty volatile markets ahead of us. But at the very least, for the rest of this year, well, I would say into August, September, because as if we're just kind of looking acutely this year, we also have that kind of yucky Venus and Mercury retrograde in Scorpio
yeah, yeah,
this fall. And
yeah,
if you look at the 8-year cycle, that puts us back to 2018. And remember, we had the Christmas crash in 2018. And so I do anticipate we'll see some significant weakness at the end of this year. But as far as the overall trend being continuing up, at least for this year and perhaps next year, we'll see how that unfolds. But yeah, I share your sentiment. I think crude oil is fascinating. We're coming into one of the things that I track on crude oil is Neptune declination cycles.
oh sure, yeah,
And so we in May 4th, we get Neptune passing over zero declination. But really, the points that I keep a very close eye on for major weekly pivots is the maximum and minimum declination. So that maximum declination window is July 6th. And so I think overall my outlook is that I'm looking to add to my crude oil and ag positions or reinitiate them if I end up unloading any of them in June, July, because I think that sets us up then for that period of weakness into Q3, Q4 in the U.S. equity markets.
I do like that. I do like that. Your Neptune in fire signs typically is inflationary, and you mentioned the simultaneous Mercury Venus retrograde. We had that during the tariff tantrums last year. And also, it still is a midterm year. Midterm years tend to be volatile, sideways oriented. So that fits, a pattern as well. So yeah.
They do. And I did this really interesting research. Let's see if I didn't prep it, but it's on my charts if I can just locate it with ease here. On Venus retrograde in water signs. Have you looked at those periods ever?
No, but I think last year it was in Pisces when everything blew up.
Yeah, so there's this
Yeah.
cyclical pattern. Let's drop it on the weekly and go back and look. Okay, here we go. So here is Venus retrograde through water signs. So we have 2020 took place during that time. Then
Oh, wow.
we have this event here, which was in 2014. We had some volatility, but overall it was still up, right? But then we get back here to 2007, and that took place right before the peak of the 2007 down market. We do tend to see some pretty extreme volatility in these periods. And then interestingly, here we go. Here's another one, 2000 to 2001. And yeah, I mean, I went back to 1980 because actually, uh, there's the Mercury apparation cycle it's pretty uneven because of Mercury's eccentricity. But we are in a apparation cycle from 1980 currently. So then that was interesting because that opened up that was part of my thesis of when gold and silver topped, which I was really right on point with that one, within about a week. Which is an interesting topic to talk about. What's your take on gold and silver?
I think gold and silver, what I would like to see them do now is kind of just spend some time going sideways. I think the trend is
Mm.
up. I don't think we've seen the big high just yet. I could see gold going above 6,000, silver maybe going up to like 150 or so. I don't think that's really, there's more upside here. I mean, silver's sitting around $78 an ounce right now, so that'd be like a double from current price levels. But honestly, I could see them continuing to correct through time and price for another couple of months here. You had a parabolic run. I mean, silver basically quadrupled. That's what a definition of a bubble is, in a matter of like 8 months, right?
Yeah.
Not when a market goes up 20% in a year. That's not a bubble. Silver exhibited bubble price action last year, but I still think the trend is up. I just like to see it, build out a new base, and it's going to take some time for the next run higher. So I still like metals. I don't really own anything that I'm actively trading right now. I mean, I have, mining stocks that I've held for years that I just, let run. But in terms of actively trading them right now, I don't think that's really where the hot money is at the moment.
Yeah, well, definitely this bounce in gold and silver was much weaker than the equity markets. The equity
Yeah.
markets definitely had a major rally off those lows. I am long silver and gold at the moment, but I was long from back here near these
Yeah.
lows.
Right.
And really, my thesis was driven by the fact that my 8-year Venus cycle analogs indicate a directional period through August. So we'll see how that manifests. And really, we're still in the kind of deciphering phase of like, it could go either way. Although I totally agree with you from just a purely technical standpoint, after the size of the move that we saw, it would make sense for gold and silver to travel sideways much for several months. I totally agree with that. But interestingly, my analogs don't exactly support that. So, uh,
I am still bullish them. You have
yeah,
Jupiter going to Leo, right?
yep,
So from an astrological standpoint, I don't think the party's over by any
yep.
means. I think you'll continue to see them go higher, um, even into next year. So while Jupiter's in Leo still, I think it's going to be good for gold and silver, just how Jupiter in Cancer was good for them too. So yeah, I just think a little bit more sideways action before you continue higher. But again, it's time and price. You know this.
Yeah.
So yeah, the price is what concerns me, but like time standpoint, Astro standpoint, I'm still pretty bullish.
You know what's interesting is, do you use the gold fix chart at all?
I do not know.
Okay, so that was the moment when the bankers in London fixed the price of gold for the first time, and it's a really great astrological chart because it's documented with the precise time and date. You
Very
can go to the
nice.
Rothschild website and get it. So I
Cool.
love that when you can get an exact time. But what
Yeah.
is notable that stands out to me, what you were just mentioning, is we've got Jupiter,
Look at that.
Neptune, Mars in
Wow.
early Leo. Isn't that?
Wow. Fire
Yeah.
signs. There you
Yep.
go.
And I use this chart as my kind of mother gold chart with a lot of success. So that was just something that I thought of when you mentioned Jupiter and Leo with the metals. Yeah, you were also talking about Jupiter. Well, you were talking about, kind of jumping back to crude oil. You were talking about the Kuwait invasion and whatnot,
Yeah.
and that also was aligned with a Jupiter in Leo as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Um,
right. Yeah.
yeah. So we've got a lot of correlations going on right now, kind of all synthesizing into,
Yeah.
one moment in time.
No, it's true. I mean, the thing is I think we're in a broader inflationary environment. I think this is something you're going to see the cost of living and asset prices go up for several more years. I think it'll spill over into the 2030s. Bond markets are kind of signaling this too. So, I mean, it's just one of those things like get with the times or get left behind. Isn't that always the story? But I mean, we're seeing it in the stars now. This is not the stability, you know, or I should say like the overall cost of living stability that you had for like, 10, 15 years post financial crisis. It's a new world, and I think we need to be making preparations for just things to keep getting more expensive, assets and, living.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, you know what's interesting? I just was looking at this gold chart. You look at astrology charts, you notice something different every time you look at it. Um,
Yeah.
this just jumped out at me. We've got Chiron's just a few degrees off of its conjunction with Eris right there. Actually, well, I'd have to check. I
Wow.
think Chiron moves faster than Eris. Yeah. Anyway, just notable because we're in that acute phase right now. We just saw the Chiron Eris conjunction. Did you track
Yeah.
that one at all?
No, I don't work with Eris that much, so yeah, that's pretty interesting though.
It was interesting because we just had a Venus Eris Chiron conjunction. It was really very close to the bottom of the U.S.
Really?
equity
Okay.
markets.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was around I think it was March 27th, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so it has a historical correlation to periods of weakness and turning points. So that showed up again. I'll have to explore that on gold now that I noticed that.
Yeah.
Cool. Wow, this has been such an awesome conversation. I always love put our heads together and see what we see.
Indeed.
Um, do you have any other last minute thoughts or things you want to share with the viewers before we go?
Um, Nothing particular. I think we covered most of it. I just think, right now the opportunities in tech, we're in the early stages of a big reset, and um, I like that, that hot spot in the fall that we're talking about. The
Yeah.
Venus retrograde, Mercury retrograde for the next serious situation. I don't think the geopolitical situation is going to quiet down at all.
Yeah, I
I
agree
wouldn't be
with that.
surprised if this situation escalated even more, but I don't like when I say this, I'm like, listen, I'm not like cheerleading the war, right? But war is often bullish for stocks. And so we already
Yep.
had the repricing of everything, right? Oil prices are higher. The market has accepted this is the new reality. And I guess what I'm saying is don't let the headlines and the fear out there deter you from, owning what's going to protect you during these inflationary times. So that's, I guess, my final say.
That's excellent words of wisdom. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Do you want to tell the viewers where they can find you too?
Sure. So my financial astrology work is primarily with Ray Merriman and his crew at MMAcycles.com. And I also published a book, Esoteric Economics. You can find that on my website, themercator.com. It's also for sale on the MMA Cycles website. And just basically a financial astrology textbook is the best way I would describe it. So that's pretty much what we got going on right now. And yeah, just
Awesome.
keeping up with
I
everything.
will give a testimonial for your book. I read your book and it was outstanding and I highly recommend it. It was
Thank you.
super informative and for anyone at any level, I would say there's something to take away in your book. So, um,
Thank you.
yep, that's the end of the day.
Yeah, there you go.
Perfect timing. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to connect with me, you can connect with me through my website at margoamala.com. I do personalized astrology readings, also work with people on learning financial astrology. And then you can also join my Discord. And you can join that directly through Discord or through Patreon. And you can find me on X as well. All the links will be in the video description below. Have a great day.
Thanks, Margo.
Bye.
Recording stopped.